And thanks to McNally Jackson, and thanks for everybody for coming. I thought to be topical, I'd read some fiction about the economy. I'm going to read two bits indirectly and directly related to economics. The first one is it was published in a journal that just came out called No Colony, and this one is called The Executive's Song. Every second I was pumping someone for information, or being pumped, or trying to sell an idea, either Fred's or my own, which at that time were distinct but combining and full of promise, but still only that. This was in a magnificent hotel overlooking a Swedish harbor. It was midsummer or late winter or both, that kind of place. The conference hall was various planes of smoked glass. We were always amber until we went outside, and then we jumped out of our minds with the yellow-white clarity of everything. And at night, what night we had, was the winking stars of elevator buttons and cones of bar light. I'd been living out of a hotel for the past year, having an extended conversation with Fred, calling from Busan and Madrid and Mexico City and London and Dusseldorf. And Fred, who was fat and immobile and a genius and who lived with his thumb through tomes and his two buffoonish dogs, and who, with his badly outdated computer, conspired with me our great plan, which would pour energy into the smoking brown grid of America, the spiderweb of India, the patchwork dynamo of China, which would engineer systems rewarding only the smartest and most efficient of behaviors, take advantage of human frailty, but for the good, build the state-of-the-art factories that will make us kings, I guess, or martyrs, as we'd sacrifice all our air and blood for this, and it wasn't like we needed the money. I didn't even really think of it as a gamble. I thought of it as life. I was an animal named Ambition who procreated asexually but out of sheer effort. I was a gourmand of institutional power, of the bureaucratic forces that shot out of governments. I ate these, tasted them like bread, tasted them like meat, tasted them like coffee, like lime juice and figs. This was the animal I was. We got up in the mornings and jumped on the computer. Some of us went to the hotel pool, others checked messages, one or maybe two indulged for 20 minutes of poetry, but even this was purposeful. Several meditated. Do you think we masturbated or hit the snooze button or fumbled with the coffee maker or lingered over the room service menu? Do you? We were up at 6, at 5, at 4, with complete disregard for our meat-spaced bodies. We were ideas hurtling into the world, fueled by simply being, driven by drive, forced by force, willed by will. We carefully delivered our ideas beside water glasses, within which floated slices of beautifully translucent lemon, quietly enunciating over polished tables and ionized and perfectly humidified air. The worst of us used projected charts and maps and figures. The best of us just spoke, manifesting intelligence like monumental sculptures growing out of the tabletops. We were there to create partnerships, not yet to compete nor cut throats. That would be years later, after consolidation. Right now, the markets were in their perfect sexual flower, exquisite and ready. We were excited and virile and planned to be gentlemanly. There looked like plenty to go around in all different ingenious ways to have it. And then we left. The airports threw us in distant radiating arcs, an abstract chrysanthemum of to-do lists. But from our first landings, we scattered and zigzagged to not final destinations, and this was not a flower, but an elaborate and fine net within which we enclosed the globe and ourselves. The excitement for me, and I do think for Fred, was in seeing the development, the change. The first acts in the new world become the second. This happened over a decade. So many things happen like this, small signs, little appearances, an almost ruinous setback, and then the geometric, the logarithmic, the exploding growth. A year or two of revolution, and then remarkably, you are the landscape, you are what is. That was the story we read about. Deep in our nights, that was the story we dreamed about, but it wasn't happening. Things weren't taking root. Our predictions were looking soggy. Our factories were sitting there, gleaming, but just sitting there. The youngest and smartest hirelings were moving elsewhere. My hair turned white. One of Fred's dogs died. I married my son's ex-girlfriend and caused havoc. But then Fred sent me again to Madrid. I was to convince them into making a 2-year investment with a deep discount and a profit-sharing plan that I thought was clearly desperation, but which Fred said was the stroke of genius he'd been hoping for. And Madrid said yes. And before I could really understand it, the story which I so hoped would be our story was our story. The beguiling and sultry markets opened up, and we engaged in a long and mutually satisfying fucking that seemed to go on and on and on in a sometimes sweet and furious madness, and sometimes in a perfect rhythm of spring day following spring day. In our own way, we conquered the world. After that, we were old men, never starving, beautifully clothed, always a little vacant.
you.